Honourable David Parker, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the Labor Party, aware of the caution that is needed around this issue, does support the bill. As earlier speakers have said, one of the problems in New Zealand is that covered bonds, which create a class of class of deposits that are lent to New Zealand banks, give the people that have the benefit of that covered bond a preferential interest in the assets of the bank in the event that it goes broke. And so the amount that is left for people that are outside of that covered bond arrangement is less, and they wear a more than proportionate share of the loss in the event that there aren't enough assets to cover, when the bank's wound up, to cover the amount that has been deposited in the bank. Now, the problem we've got in New Zealand is that at the moment that is allowed to happen, but it's an unregulated activity, and the Reserve Bank hasn't had a direct tool to control the level of those covered bonds. And so, on balance, we and the Labor Party accept that it is necessary to regulate covered bonds so that there is a clear limit on the amount that can be covered ahead of other unsecured depositors in the bank. I agree with Russell Norman that it is unfortunate that we've got to the point in New Zealand that we're so reliant on foreign capital that we've had to legitimise covered bonds and create this level or this differential between the rights on wind-up of those who have the benefit of covered bonds compared with those that don't. I also agree with the Honourable Shane Jones that the long-term key to overcoming this and perhaps backing out of covered bonds is a more effective New Zealand economy. The capital part of that is reliant on increases in productivity, sorry, I shouldn't have said it quite that way. All of the factors of achieving that better economic outcome are interlinked, but an important part of achieving the increase in productivity and increase in wealth that we need is to improve the pool of New Zealand investment capital that's going into the productive economy. And the two most important ingredients of that have been completely ignored by this government. The government refuses to make KiwiSaver universal, compulsory scheme like they have in Australia, which has stood them in good stead. Indeed, no one should forget that the government railed against KiwiSaver, voted against it, and have tinkered with the details of it since they came into Parliament as the government in 2008. Mr Speaker, KiwiSaver needs to be made universal. They do get all these big calls wrong when it comes to the long-term wealth of our country. As Shane Jones has said, they also ceased contributions to the Cullen Fund at a time when borrowing rates for governments were at historic lows, and it was obvious following the clean-out in the global financial crisis that returns on equities in the future from that low base would be higher than the Crown cost of funds. Despite that, Bill English ceased contributions to the Cullen Fund, and as a consequence, that fund, or the New Zealand Superannuation Fund as it's more properly called, is some billions of dollars smaller, both in terms of contributions that weren't made to it, but also earnings that would have been made in addition on those contributions. So that's the second bad call. And the third one, which impacts upon this, is not getting the tax signal right, so that we encourage too many people in New Zealand to put their investment money instead of into a bank deposit or into a share, both of which can improve the productive economy. We encourage too much money to go into residential rental investment, which drags money out of the out of the productive economy, and also at the same time increases the demand for money to come from offshore into New Zealand banks to feed that appetite for more borrowing for mortgages. And as Dr Clark just intervened there, one of the reasons that they do that is that they are determined to protect the vested interests of those who don't want the relative value of property assets in the rental market change relative to the value of investments in the productive economy. They are happy to continue preferring the interests of speculators over the productive economy, and as a consequence we've just had another report to show that New Zealand doesn't get as much in terms of returns from tertiary education because we don't invest enough capital in our productive enterprises. So all of these problems are interlinked. This bill, insofar as it goes, is a bill that we're supporting, but it doesn't cure the underlying problems that have led to its need.
Kanwal Bakshi. The debate has now concluded. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Opposing will say no. The ayes have it.
Reserve Bank of New Zealand Covered Bonds Amendment Bill, third reading.
I declare the House in committee. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I can't hear. Oh, call on Government Order of the Day, number 7. Sorry.
Non-Bank Deposit Takers Bill, committee stage.
I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Non-Bank Deposit Takers Bill.